Good morning, and I'd like to call to order the Housing and Community Services of Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting. I just went blank. My name is Commissioner Char Revis. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, HACSA staff. We do not seem to have any public comment today. No signatures there, so we're going to move on. Do we have any commissioners? Comments or remonstrance? Yeah, I lost my picture here for a minute. No? All right, then we're going to move on to emergency business, and I do not believe, was there adjustments to the agenda? I'm going to go back to number one, and are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right, seeing them, then I'll move on. No emergency business, and then so we're going to go to administration and approval of the minutes. And I'd like to now entertain a motion to approve the minutes unless... Do you have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Oh, okay. The minutes are approved and that motion is passed. All right, so now, pop that back up. We're going to go on to the semi-annual implementation review of the HACSA strategic plan. And good morning, Jacob, and that's you.
Great. So, Commissioners, as you know, you approved a new 3-year strategic plan for HACSA earlier this year. In 2010, the HACSA board put the first 5-year strategic plan in place, and part of what the board asked was for twice yearly updates on the progress that we're making as an organization. So we come to you in July, and we'll come to you again in January with your semi-annual updates. So I'm a visual person. We're making a lot of progress as an organization. I'm going to talk about some of that in more detail, but we wanted to start with a time-lapse video of the progress that we're making at the Oaks at 14th. This dovetails nicely with the first part of our strategic plan is to enhance our communication tools and to tell the HACSA story. So for this project, we invested in a time-lapse camera that will capture the progress throughout the construction period, and we'll be able to use that to update you as a commission and also use that to update the public as to the progress we're making. So it's a short video, 2 minutes or less, and you can kind of see our progress in action. So as we evolve, we might add music to it to spice it up a little bit. But for us, it's just really neat to see, the progress we're making in housing low-income people, and also the progress we're making in enhancing the economy here in Lane County by employing Excellence Construction and their subcontractors to build out this unique property. So you all have the strategic plan report in front of you. We changed the format slightly into more of a matrix format. If you have feedback on whether this works for you or not, I'm very open to it either at the meeting or afterwards. But what I wanted to do is just kind of go through. I'm not going to talk about every update because I know you've read the materials, but I want to just pull out what I consider the highlights. So as I talked about, communications capacity and community education are big parts of our new strategic plan. And so we're doing a variety of things to expand our communication capacity, and this is one example. The other thing I'd mention on page 2 is that under Ella's leadership, We've put together a communications committee, and this has membership from each division within the organization. And the first thing that they're tackling is updating all the content on our website. We have a lot of things that are not updated, and we want to make sure that the information is accurate and accessible to the community. I think after the materials or the content of the website's updated, we may look at a new website, but we want to start with just making sure the content is accurate. So that's kind of a highlight of page 2. I would highlight on page 3 another important place where we're engaging with the community. HACSA passes through federal rental subsidy to over 900 landlords in the community. Many of these landlords are represented by the Rental Owners Association. It's a very active committee of landlords, and we want to more proactively engage with that group. So Beth Oakes, who's out of town today, is our Rent Assistance Division Director. She's on the board of the Rental Owners Association, and Darlene, who's behind me here, is our Property Management Division Director, and she also attends on a regular basis. So we're increasing our dialogue with the landlord community. So going on to page 4, a big part of my job, even before I came to work at HACSA, I've always been involved in local, regional, and national advocacy around affordable housing. So I continue to be active, and I continue to connect HACSA with organizations that it hasn't historically connected with. The Oregon Opportunity Network is one good example. That's a group of housing authorities and community development corporations from around the state of Oregon, and it's a good professional group and advocacy group. The other thing I'd point out is that I also am really proud of the kind of renewed relationship and connection that we have with Lane County. I know that in the last few years, our Glenwood project has been part of the United Front communication with our national leadership. And even yesterday, I was at a meeting with Steve Manila and Alex Kyler, talking about affordable housing advocacy and how that fits with the bigger legislative advocacy that Lane County is engaged in. So it feels good to connect more deliberately with Lane County. On page 5, I just wanted to give a recognition to HACSA's Inclusion Council. Valerie leads that group, but it is an active group of employees that are addressing issues of inclusion and diversity in our workplace. They've actively promoted many trainings for members in the organization, and it's really an important issue for our community, and they're helping keep HACSA at the forefront of those issues. On page 6, I know it's a small thing, but one of the, kind of in the middle there, one of the things that came back when we did our strategic plan interviews was that customer service can improve at HACSA. One of the things that we discovered was that we would have participants on the Section 8 program come into the lobby, and staff wouldn't come out to help them with their questions. That had been a long-term historic approach to doing business at HACSA, and we put a policy in place that when participants of our programs come into the lobby for support and help, that we get out there and help them. Moving to page 7, I'm delighted to report that HACSA is expanding its fundraising and grant writing capabilities. We've had some important successes. The Madrone Continuum of Care grant is really exciting. Recent grant that HACSA received. It's going to be $435,000 per year to provide rent assistance and case management for homeless individuals and homeless families. Again, this is a great example of partnership between HACSA and Lane County, because this grant, while HACSA is the direct grantee with HUD, is part of the continuum of care that's managed by Alicia, Karen, and Steve. The other thing I'd say, the second one, the Pay for Success, is a grant that we wrote in collaboration with Lane County Parole and Probation and sponsors. And it's a planning grant that will bring $1.3 million of planning money into the community for the next 3 years. HACSA gets a relatively small slice of that, but it's an important effort in partnership. And then last but not least, as you know, I was at the Lane County Board on June 21st, and Steve Manell and I talked about the progress we're making on the Housing First project. On page 8, another example of us diversifying our funding revenue is that we've secured a cell phone tower. We're still negotiating the contract with Verizon. Is that correct, Verizon?
Yep.
And Valerie's leading that effort, but we really are trying to diversify different revenue sources. Down at the bottom of the page is just a reference to our planning for a new administrative building, and as you know, you received an update in our last board meeting just with the preliminary analysis around square footage and other space needs. Page 9, I would highlight at the top just the rental assistance demonstration work we're doing, and we'll be coming at the next board meeting and doing a more detailed update for you on that front. On page 10, you saw, and Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Bozabitz were able to attend the groundbreaking on, and Commissioner Rivas and Commissioner Metzger, sorry, were able to attend the groundbreaking of the Oaks at 14th, and you saw the progress we're making there. Down at the bottom of page 10, we also received an EWIP grant to do a solar voltaic array on the same roof as the Verizon cell tower. And then on page 11, in the middle, we're starting to pursue awards for HACSA more proactively. HACSA does a lot of innovative things, and we want to be recognized at the state and national level for our innovation. Bottom of page 11, we just talk about a procurement training. So this is what I consider just progress in getting back to the basics at HACSA, making sure that all our compliance and procurement systems are well-rounded, well-organized. And then the last thing I'd update you on is page 13, and I want to just give you a heads up that we have requested and received time on August 31st to do a board work session on our budget. In the past, we've come to you sort of in the last week before we needed a budget approved, and I and Valerie and the rest of the team would really value a work session where we can get more of a dialogue and input prior to us finalizing our budget for this next fiscal year. So that concludes my highlights of our activities, and I would welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Do we have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to go on to, now I gotta make this visible. Order 1607 -112-01H in the matter of the Housing and Community Services Agency of Lane County Board of Commissioners by resolution authorizes the issuance of a request for proposal for an energy performance contract pursuant to HUD's energy performance contracting guidelines contingent upon the authorization from the Portland, Oregon U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Office. All right, welcome Valerie, and you're up.
Good morning, all. I am like a greenie, and to me, it's always worth it to save energy in any way with any tool possible. And energy is one of the major cost drivers of our public housing and all of our housing, really. But the unique way that HUD funds our public housing operations is, in a way, a disincentive to energy savings. So, for example, if we spent money out of our CAP fund to tear out lawns and replace them with xeriscaping that required less water, well, in the next budget cycle, we would receive less operating funds from HUD. So we'd spend out of our pocket to create the savings, and then we would just get less money to operate. So HUD realizes this, and they have come up with the Energy Performance Contracting Program. This program is very closely prescribed by HUD, and it's one of the reasons why we're talking to you now before we even release an RFP, where normally we wouldn't do that. We would talk to you after, depending on how much money it was going to be. But some of the interesting requirements here are that we talked to you before, and I'll say more about why later. And before we release this RFP, actually HUD needs to review the final language. So I think in your packet you have a pretty close draft, but I have a few more tweaks to make on that before I can give the final version to HUD. It's all in the memo, but basically how it works is we hire an energy performance contracting company who is on HUD's approved list of energy performance contractors, and they analyze our properties looking for opportunities to do capital improvements that will result in long-term energy consumption reductions. They put a whole package together of a whole bunch of these types of projects at our different properties. Some could be water projects, some could be electricity projects. I'm hoping to roll the non-grant funded portion of the solar panel project into this. So we have the whole project sized. The contractor helps us arrange financing. The financing, the payback period on the financing is matched to the period of time that HUD will freeze our operating subsidy. So in this case, once you're in an energy performance contract, if we do save dollars and consumption on energy, our subsidy will be frozen at the pre-project level rather than going down as our cost and consumption go down. So that lasts 15 years, and the payback period on the financing will match that 15 years. So when we reach year 16 and the freeze goes away and our operating subsidy drops, our debt will be paid off by that point. When I was thinking about talking to you about this, I was trying to look at it from your perspective, and I guess I would see a risk that the energy performance contracting engineer would design a project that would not result in the savings that we hope that it would. And actually, HUD requires in our final contract with that company that we include something called a performance assurance guarantee, so that the energy performance contracting company, if they are not able to produce the savings that they say they are, will have to pick up the tab for that and make us whole to the point where the savings were projected. So, unless you have any questions, what we need from you today is to approve this board order, basically telling us to go ahead. The next thing we'll do is put the last finishing touches on the RFP, have HUD approve the RFP, and then issue it. And once we have a partner, then we'll start doing engineering analyses at all of our projects.
I have a question. Approving this doesn't obligate HACS of anything, right? I mean, we send out to HUD and we say we're going to do this RFP process, but it doesn't obligate us to spend any money or actually hire anybody.
Not today.
Do you anticipate? I'm not familiar with these matters. Do you anticipate a competition for this, where companies would be willing to risk having to pay?
I'm hoping so.
Okay. So there are companies out there that are engaged in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Energy performance contracting's been an active part of our industry for about 12 years. And I wouldn't necessarily, 12 years ago, I wouldn't have promoted this program, but it's gotten more sophisticated. And I know a lot of other housing authority directors that have seen, a significant reduction in expenses, and then a maintenance of the operating support we get from HUD. So it's proven to be a very effective tool.
Any questions? Commissioner Brinson.
It sounds like a good plan, and it's not just about the expenses, it's also about limiting the amount of resources we're utilizing. And we've had great experience with energy performance contracts with the county here in the PSB with McKinstry, sorry. And some of the savings we've gained here in changing out some of our mechanical, electrical, and other things. So I think it's a good plan. We should move ahead.
Any comments or questions? All right. I would like to, oh, go ahead.
No, I move approval of order 16-07-12-01H.
Second?
Second. Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, then, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposing? Okay, so this has passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, so then we're going to move on to order and resolution in the matter of approving the submission of the annual agency plan for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2016. And Jacob?
Great. So this is something that you as a board approve every year, and HUD requires that you approve our annual plan. I want to point out a couple high points. First, the next agenda item is something that you haven't done before, and that's because HUD has decoupled the annual plan and the capital project fund action. So normally the next agenda item was under the umbrella of the annual plan, and they've been pulled apart. So a few highlights from our annual agency plan. First, there's a section in the actual plan itself, page 2 of 11, that focuses on affirmatively furthering fair housing. So there's been a new regulation that hasn't been implemented yet, but this new regulation is going to require HACSA to do a lot of work and due diligence to develop what's called an affirmatively furthering fair housing plan. So that'll be a big body of work for us over the coming year. I know that local jurisdictions, in this case, the city of Eugene and Springfield, are also required to develop a similar plan. So just know that this will be a huge investment of time for our staff, and it's pretty fraught with some unclarity sort of from HUD, so it's going to be, I think, a pretty big challenge. But at the end of the day, obviously, furthering fair housing is a good thing. But I'm worried about, frankly, what it's going to take the staff to pull it off. I wanted to just highlight a couple big things that are kind of in this plan, and obviously big impacts on the agency. First, this rental assistance demonstration program is really critical for the future of HACSA's housing portfolio. We're launching our rental assistance demonstration project with the Richardson Bridge rehabilitation, which again, we're coming back at the next board meeting to talk more in depth about that. The other thing that we'll be doing over the next few months is setting up a project-based Section 8 program. Again, that may merit its own work session actually, because it's a pretty complex issue that's going to have sort of macro impacts on the Section 8 program at large. But those are two things in this annual plan that I would call out for you as big bodies of work. The other big body of work was that underneath the umbrella of this plan are two HUD-required policy documents, and we've talked about these, but one for public housing, which Darlene is the director of, is called the Admissions and Continued Occupancy Policy, and we have a summary of the changes that we've made to this policy. I can tell you that we've made a lot more changes than we had in years past. And the reason for that is we have a HUD audit, what's called a review, but it's compliance and audit in August, and we wanted to make sure that our 2 policy documents required by HUD were up to date and in compliance with all HUD regulations. What we've experienced at HACSA over the last 18 months or so is that a lot of the policy documents hadn't been updated in a significant amount of time. So we hired kind of a national contractor to come in, and they spent 3 days with Darlene on the ACOP, and then they spent 3 days with Beth Oakes on the Section 8 admin plan. And what that service did for us is it basically guarantees us that we are in compliance with HUD. So the matrix that you have for the ACOP and the admin plan highlights every single change that we've made, and there's a column that points out whether the change was required or not. So I want to just give thanks to Darlene and Beth Oakes, who's not here. It was a huge body of work for both of them, and I feel very grateful to them and very confident now that our policy documents are in compliance with HUD requirements. So those are the highlights of the annual plan.
All right. Are there any comments and questions, Commissioner?
Thank you. So Jacob, the first piece that you mentioned where if you could go back to the new added regulation that's been added to HACSA, and what is it called again?
It's affirmatively furthering fair housing plan.
Okay, I'm going to ask that if you could keep this board updated on where you are in that, so that if we need to address a congressional delegation on this issue in particular, it would be very helpful, because this is beginning to sound like Dodd-Frank, which one originally thought of was going to be such a brilliant idea, and it's gone from too big to fail to now way too big to fail, and it's literally created that. You're also seeing private equity come back into this issue significantly in the financial world, and we know what that does. They break up companies. So it's just an example, and this may be an example of maybe just too much. And if it's putting too much pressure on our local housing authorities, in my view, that's not good. But it's always good to make sure that we have direct line of communication with our congressional delegation, especially those who really are active in working with HUD.
We'll do so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Massey?
You mentioned project-based Section 8. Do you have a specific project in mind that you can talk about now?
We do. Well, there are a few. So first of all, I think for HACSA, preservation and making sure that our existing assets are healthy and financial entities is really important, and you can use project-based Section 8 to do that. There may also be projects that St. Vincent de Paul or Cornerstone also own or control that may benefit from these vouchers being used as sort of a preservation tool. But more, if there's any new construction or my vision is to use it to serve special needs populations. So focus it on folks coming out of corrections, folks coming out of homelessness, women coming out of domestic violence. So it's a tool used nationwide to really help housing authorities and communities serve really needy populations. So that would be what I would request from the board is support to target these limited resources at those populations.
Comments or discussion?
In charge, there was just a few things that were pointed out, changes, some increases in fees. Just kind of curious, some of them are kind of high, deposits and stuff. I guess that just reflects the cost of cleaning and late fees. Generally, do you have policy to kind of work for somebody if they have some unexpected financial difficulties so that they don't have to incur a penalty? How does that kind of work?
That's a great question. One thing I forgot to mention is that we did spend a significant amount of time with our resident advisory board discussing some of these issues. The leaders from that board that include Shar and Hugh and Dana is also present here. had significant concerns about the increase in the late fee and the increase in the security deposit. For me, it was a very difficult decision to make, but I do believe in a few things. One is I believe in the ability of people to pay their rent on time, and I think by working more proactively with resident services, we can identify maybe a group of residents that are continually paying late and really see if there's other community supports that could help people pay on time. But getting our rent revenue in the door is important, and this the commissioners know we are operating the housing division at a significant loss. The other thing is that the security deposits have been in place for I don't know how many years, but well over 10. And what we're experiencing is that the cost of turning vacates far exceeds the deposit on file. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that on occasion residents do leave a unit in disrepair. I don't think that happens every time by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing I would say is that on average our public housing buildings I think are 41 years old, or they're just really old buildings. So we're encountering conditions when we turn units that are just very, very expensive. So it was not a decision made lightly, but I feel like it's a decision that's in the best financial interest of HACSA at large.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I have family members that rent and do different things, and so I know that these numbers are considerably lower than what the other individuals are paying. So they were pretty large increases. So I just wanted to have a conversation.
Do you want to come to the table?
I was just going to add as well that around the security deposits, so I'm Darlene from the Public Property Management Division. Around security deposits as well, a lot of our discussion was around how will it affect our existing residents and how will it affect our applicants out in the community. So we did a lot of work comparing our existing deposits, which were in elderly and disabled units only $100. A typical clean, to bring a cleaner in after, is between $300 and $600 on a contract even. So the costs, we weren't able to really balance that out. So we do have a loan program through NEDCO where applicants coming in pretty consistently will get a interest-free loan from NEDCO to help them pay their security deposits. And they can pay that over time, and HACSA actually is the guarantor on those loans. So it allows NEDCO to help us provide this service for people who may have a hard time coming in and paying $400 of a deposit up front. So that was one of the really good things. We've had that in place a long time. It works really well. We almost never have somebody who doesn't pay their security deposit. And on the other side, a lot of Commissioner Massengill in particular asked us, how does this affect our existing residents? And so it really doesn't, except if they happen to transfer units. If they transfer from, let's say, a 3-bedroom and they're going to go down to a 2-bedroom, whatever amount they had on deposit to start will can transfer over to their new unit, and then if they would just pay the difference. And again, we have that NEDCO loan opportunity available for people. So I'm hoping that addresses that in particular. And I think the issue of late fees as well is just helping us to get our rent collection up. I mean, the percentage of late payers is really high, and we're doing a lot with our folks right now to really try to talk about the importance of paying rent first, that your rent is prorated based on your income, and really doing a lot of educational pieces around that as well.
Any questions? All right, so I have some comments. So the RAB did talk about this, and one of their concerns was that when it came to the RAB, it was already in the book. It wasn't a draft. It was, it was already in the book. And so, yes, we could still discuss it. Yes, we could do public comment. But there wasn't a whole lot of time in there between, and then we did the RAB retreat. There was some issues with it then. And then due to communications, we didn't get because Mira was out of town, we didn't get anything in to the public comments that would then go with the with this to HUD, and so I think there was some real disappointment. I know on my part that we weren't able to do that because we did have some issues. As far as the deposits, I guess my thought was it's too bad that it couldn't stay at 25, but there couldn't be like a first, second, and third offense kind of thing where it then would go up to a higher price for chronically late rent. You know, that was one thought. And the other thought was to put the deposit amounts on the pre-application so that when people apply, they know right away how much of a deposit they're going to have to pay. And that way, that because you're on the waiting list quite a while, it would give them plenty of time to save money if they didn't want to go into debt. And a little more clarification on the transfer part. So let's say you were living in a 3-bedroom and you paid $400 deposit. You moved to a 2-bedroom, which is now going to have a higher deposit. So you're basically just eating the difference, right? You know, because you would normally get the rest of that back.
So if their initial,
current
if their
residents.
addition, so if for current resident, if they have a higher deposit, so let's say they were in a 3-bedroom and they're moving to a 1-bedroom or something, if the amount they paid is more than their new deposit, they will get a refund.
Okay.
If it's less, then we'll do a payment arrangement if they need that to pay the difference.
All right, okay, that was my clarification. So I would like to suggest that we revisit this again, maybe in a year if we do decide to pass this, and that come to the RAB in a plenty of time and in a big discussion where we just like make an hour to discuss it, where people can really, talk about things.
I think that's a great idea, and I've already worked with the resident services person to set up a way for RAB to have input on a number of our documents, including the lease, before the next year, so we can
Yes.
gather that input. And unfortunately, I came in so late into the game back to HACSA that we were redoing all of these documents all in the last month or two, rather than next year it will be spread out throughout the year. So we'll be working on the admissions and continued occupancy policy for 1 month, and then it might be the lease the next month, and then it might be our handbook the next month. And so I think it's a great way that we can get input all along the way from the RAB.
Yeah, and I think that would I think it would make them feel like they were actually being heard in a new way, and so that's what I have about all that. And Commissioner Messi.
I guess it's more of a comment than a question. It goes to project-based Section 8 and special needs. It really does occur to me in Lane County, and I'm over 65, so I'm kind of got in this kind of bias, but it does seem to me that Lane County could use more senior housing. And it's my understanding that several of the projects in Lane County are financed through project-based Section 8. Is that at all an option for HACSA to consider in the future to do specifically a senior complex?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's many different types of project-based Section 8. So the project-based that I refer to would be taking a voucher out of our tenant-based pool and attaching it to a unit. And that's part of our Housing Choice Voucher program. There are also HUD contracted buildings that receive a Section 8 subsidy out of like a different part of HUD. And those buildings were, sort of specifically funded and built for seniors only. So we don't have any of those buildings, but I know Mira, our resident services manager, is interested in pursuing a senior-only building. We think with Medicaid dollars, there might be a way to do a subsidized assisted living facility. So that's an area that I think as an organization we need to analyze what the community needs are and respond to the best of our ability.
All right, any further discussion, comments, questions? Okay, well, I'll now entertain a motion to approve.
I move approval of the order in Resolution 16-07-12-02H in the matter of approving the submission of the annual agency plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All right, then. It
Is
is,
there further discussion?
I thought that was after.
Oh, sorry. I get it. I missed.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to pass this motion. See, I'm trying to do it. And so, is there any further discussion? No, I have to do the, no, is there any further discussion? You're right, you're right. Yes.
I have no further discussion.
You got me all confused. All right, then, all in favor of motion, approving the motion, now I don't know which one we're at E, right? D, okay, improving order and resolution 1607-12-02H in the matter of approving the submission of the annual agency plan for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2016. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Motion passed. Okay, so now we're moving on to E. Order and Resolution 16-07-12-03H in the matter of approving the submission of the 5-year Capital Project Fund Action Plan 2016-2020. And back to Jacob again.
Great. So again, this usually was under the umbrella of the annual plan, which you just approved, but HUD required that we sort of pulled this into a separate board order. So it's pretty straightforward. I guess the only thing I would say is that the demand of capital projects in our portfolio far exceeds the amount that we get from HUD every year to do capital improvements. And then the other thing I'd point out, because we dealt with this at Riverview Terrace when the elevators failed, you also can't just move money around as much as you might like. So you do have to tell HUD what projects that you're going to perform and then build those into your plan every year. So one of the things that we'll talk about in the budget work session at the board is what are the appropriate reserve levels for us as an agency. I can see a time when we may need to take on federal money that's in reserves and use it to address an emergency repair because we don't have time to go through the HUD amendment process. So that'll be something that we'll talk about more at the board work session. I do want to just acknowledge Jared Young, who's a contract administrator. He reports up to Kurt Bondere, our capital projects administrator, and Jared has really done a lot of great work in putting this plan together, and he's learning a lot, and I consider him a specialist in some of the HUD requirements associated with the administration of the capital project. So thank you, Jared. And that concludes my comments.
All right, do you have any questions or concerns? All right. Hearing none, then I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Chair, I'd move approval of Order 16-7-12-03H in the matter of approving the submission of the 5-year capital project fund action plan for 2016 through 2020.
Second.
All right. I've got a motion to approve in a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Then, now just... All in favor of approving this motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, no opposition, and this motion has passed. So now we're gonna move on to, now we're at F, right? It's like Order and Resolution 16-07-12-041 in the matter of adopting a significant amendment to HACSA's annual plan regarding the Rental Assistant Demonstration Program. And that's Jacob.
Great. So again, beyond the work sessions and communication we've done to the board about our rental assistance demonstration. There's nothing new in here. This is a HUD requirement. We frankly had some question whether it was technically required, but we erred to the side of caution and did what HUD said we needed to do, which was to prepare the significant amendment and ask for your approval. So in essence, this just keeps us in compliance with the rental assistance demonstration program and allows us to move forward with the program as we've discussed with the board.
Any questions or comments? All right. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
I move approval of the order in Resolution 16-07-12-04H in the matter of adopting the significant amendment to HACS's annual plan regarding the rental assistance demonstration program.
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, then I'd like to call for the vote. Those voting aye will now indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And those voting no shall say nay. Okay, now ready. So this motion has passed. All right, so our next item is number 6, executive session. We do not have one today. Is there any other business? Okay, no, then this meeting is adjourned.
Commissioners meeting for this Tuesday, July 12th, and start with our first item, which is adjustments to the agenda. I would note that we do have an emergency business item, and I would also state for the record that Commissioner Farr is excused today as he's out of the state for personal business. Are there any other adjustments? Okay. So with that, we'll move to public comment. It's time when we allocate 20 minutes in our agenda for speakers to come and give testimony for whatever topic that they choose to. I'd like to limit the speakers to 3 minutes apiece. I'd like to, when I call your name, please come forward to the podium, state your name and general area of residence, and then I'll start the timer for 3 minutes. Our first individual is Duncan Murray. Good morning.
My name's Duncan Murray. I'm a resident of Eugene. I'm represented by Commissioner Farr. I want to thank you for considering putting on the ballot a review procedure for initiatives. And I want to ask you a rhetorical question for any of you. Your wife gave you $1,000 for Christmas. So go buy yourself a new suit, 2 new suits. So you go down to Nordstrom's. You know you're a size 42. Would you go into Nordstrom's and buy a size 36 suit? No, you wouldn't, because you'd know you're wasting your money and it would not work. It wouldn't perform its function. In the same way, you are wasting your own money, my money, these people's money, when you put on the ballot an initiative that you know has a 100% chance of being tossed out by a judge because it violates Oregon law or United States law. I personally would prefer that you would use that money, instead of wasting it on this initiative, to put it toward hiring another deputy sheriff or whatever. Now, if people have a bone to pick with the law that would make this initiative unenforceable, their proper form of redress is to go to the government which created that law that made that initiative unenforceable, the United States government or the state of Oregon. Otherwise, you're wasting all of our money just in tabulating the results, putting it on the ballot, and then defending it. You're wasting money there just as you'd waste it on that size 36 suit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stan Long.
Good morning. I'm Stan Long. I live in the city of Eugene for many, many years. I wanted to encourage you to develop an ordinance through your staff or through outside experts or whatever you want to do to address the complexity of what belongs rightfully on a local ballot. And in doing so, please don't conflate the individual right to vote with the collective right of residents to put measures that qualify on the ballot. To know what that means, you have to read AG's opinions. You got to look at the past practices, which are not very transparent around what goes on the ballot and what doesn't. You got to read the state laws, and you got to know which ones apply to a charter county and which ones don't. And then you've got to look at your own ordinances and so forth and harmonize all that into something that intelligent people can look at and have reasoned discourse over. Now, what would serve the public interest the most? You may get punished for doing this, because some people like to scream and bully public officials. What would help everybody is if you took all that body of information and put it in a single county ordinance or other document we could all read. So we'd know how days are counted, we know what deadlines are, we know what it is that you have to do to qualify a measure. Now, there'll be a lot of discussion about county concern. Let me just say to you what that means. It means something that the county has authority to do. We don't, the sponsors of Home Rule and Initiative and Referendum did not intend for local people to vote on matters that directed state officials or picked fights with Congress. Those aren't local concerns. Local concerns are things that you have the authority to pass. You don't get to speak for all. We don't residents of Lane County don't speak for all Oregonians. We only speak as to county issues, right? So those distinctions, for example, you're unique among governments because you have administrative duties and you have legislative duties, unlike state and federal governments. You have the duty to run elections, and you have the absolute duty and responsibility to make the rules for local elections. And for people to suggest that you ought not to inform your conduct by what the Constitution requires is ridiculous. So you ought to get your staff together and inform yourself about what the Oregon Constitution actually requires, what the statutes that apply to you require, and come up with something the rest of us can read. And I'm sorry that people are impugning your motives in print for trying to make government better. I'll wait to see the ordinance that you actually come up with to decide what it might or might not do, but there is an issue that you should work on and solve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Michael Henry.
My name is Michael Henry, and I live in Eugene, Oregon. And I am speaking for the development of the ordinance like the other gentlemen are. The thing I concentrate on is I'm a CPA, so I try to get things right the first time. Financial resources are always a problem in any government entity, and if we spend the resources having to defend certain actions that are taken, it's a waste of time. If we get the ordinance right, if the time is spent to develop it right, it will represent the rights of the citizens, and if they can get ordinances, it can be passed. If it isn't right, then the county can tell them what they can do to make it right, or can they make it right. If this is not the right venue for them to be putting the ordinances, to putting the petitions on the ballot, then they should go to the correct venue and not our venue. We shouldn't be spending our taxpayers' money and resources on having to defend things that are impossible to defend, especially if it's against state law to do it. So I'd recommend the county do provide an ordinance that would give the guidance to make it easier for people to get accurate information on the ballot, so that when the taxpayers vote on it, they will know it can or cannot be enacted. And if it can't be enacted, the petitioners ahead of time should know that, so they can change their petition or choose a different venue to present their information. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bill Young.
Good morning. My name is Bill Young. I live in Eugene, and I also am speaking on the initiative measure, and I'm speaking in favor of it. I want to thank the commissioners for actually bringing this forward and being judicious with our resources, because that's one of the things that I see also is it's very wasteful to spend money on a resource, on putting an initiative through and finding out after the fact that it's not a legal initiative. I think that you should have those initiatives assigned like they would after an election to find out whether it's legal, whether you do that through the court system or attorney system or whatever. Have an independent body do it, because the commissioners aren't trying to take our rights away. They're trying to save us money, and I don't want the onus to be on you for doing that. I want it to be where it's a level, fair playing field for everybody, and I think that that's what you have in mind, and I think that's the best thing that we can do for Lane County is to make sure that it's something that we can actually do legally before we even put all of the time and effort and money into trying to put an initiative through, because it takes a lot of that. And I want to thank you guys for it. Thanks.
Thank you. That was the last person that signed up. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak? Okay. I'll move to the next item, which is item 3, Commissioner's response to public comments and other issues and/or remonstrance. I guess I'd just like to start by saying thank you to the folks that came and had to wait an extra hour to give testimony and give your thoughts. I would just share that the agenda team has this item scheduled to come back in September, sometime middle or end of September. So with that, Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. With regard to the recent national track meet, I had a chance to go to the free day at the track meet, and it was the women's hammer throw. And I had never seen a women's hammer throw. I don't even recall seeing that many hammer throws. But for me, as a novice track fan, but having visitors that came from a long, long way to pay a lot of money to watch this track meet, it really reminded me of just how important these events are to our community. And quite frankly, it was really exciting to watch this thing, because these women had been training, some of them for over 20 years for this event, and the women that were in it, they were in it to win. I mean, it was amazing how competitive they were. And the first person to win the first seed on the team, each team member is selected by whether they finish first, second, or third in their event. And the first person to win it had gone to 2 prior Olympics. And the third person to win the third slot had never been to an Olympics, and she was by far the most excited to have won third place in that hammer throw. So I just want to say that our efforts in Lane County, in the city of Eugene, and the city of Springfield to continue to bring international events to our community is I think, a really good thing, because we get a lot out of that as Eugene residents, as Lane County residents, for these spectacular events. I'm really looking forward to the 2020 and 2021 events. Regarding our work ahead on the topic of the changing the ordinances that pertain to ballot measures, I think that we got some good public comment this morning on the complexity of writing such an ordinance. And I hope that the sponsors that want to move this forward will really heed some of those remarks, because it does occur to me that if this board were to pass an ordinance in 1851 that banned abortion in Lane County, that would be ruled as legal. But if this board in 2016 passed an ordinance that banned abortion in 2016, that very same ordinance, under the very same Constitution, would be ruled unconstitutional. So I think we need to be really careful about and I think that the testimony about how the complexity of the Oregon Constitution, state Constitution, the Attorney General opinions, and the appellate case law that these courts generate all contributes to the complexity of the tasks of the advocates who, at best, want to make the system simpler, but at worst, want to take away the rights of individuals that are currently circulating petitions. And to me, that's the most negative part of it, to bring it up in the middle of an election or a petition gathering process. So thank you.
Okay. Others? Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to add on to Commissioner Sorensen's comments about the Olympic trials. And in 2008, I actually had the honor of handing the medals out to the women's hammer throwers. And so I thought that was pretty exciting. I actually saw them in the old, where they used to throw, and now, of course, they're thrown inside Hayward Field. I just want to say I thought it was a great success. And in fact, on Friday night, we went out to dinner with some friends. And you can just spot the folks who are in town that are viewing the Olympic trials. And I went to several tables and thank folks for coming here. And probably the most interesting couple, I actually ended up spending quite a bit of time. We exchanged emails and cell phone numbers, the whole works. They were from Laguna Beach, and they were up here. And it turns out the gentleman is actually personal friends with the great John Carlos, and who now lives in Iowa, by the way. And because he just wanted to get away from it all. So he moved to Iowa. God's country, I guess. Anyway, but was very intriguing, and both very, very successful. She is actually, as I found out, was just retired as the Vice President Human Resources for Volvo North America. And she answered to the CEO of the company. So what was really funny about the conversation was, oh, Volvo's great cars. And he looked at us and he said, what, do you have one? We said, no. And I said, well, do you have one? He goes, absolutely not. I'd never drive one. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny between the couple. Also, I really want to say thank you to the folks who came here this morning as well. I think it's important to note that this is something that the board hasn't, this is an initiative that was, or an idea brought by a citizen. From my perspective, I just wanted to give head nods to our legal counsel to bring back more information. And I'm glad to hear that Commissioner Stewart has actually delayed this until September. And I think that makes sense. I frankly, it's an interesting idea, concept. I will say that I'm not a fan of Bill Sizemore. I feel like he's been one of the biggest abusers of the initiative process in the state's history. And as a local government person who spent time on the Springfield Budget Committee prior to 47 and 50, and then on the City Council after 47 and 50, things changed dramatically. So I think it's important that we do gather the information from legal counsel before we move forward on any sort of decision. I think the testimony from Stan Long was much appreciated this morning, as his name has been mentioned quite a bit as someone who helped draft this, and I think from his legal perspective, I appreciate that very, very much. So it's something that it's pretty significant, and I think it'll be important for us to tread carefully as we go through this process. So I am pleased, though, that we will be taking this up and discussing this further, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Bozovich.
Thank you. So first, I just want to make note of the Michigan court incident yesterday, and just extend my thoughts out to our court staff as they kind of process that information and the risks that they deal with daily of working in a court building that may not have the world's best security. And I just want to assure them that we continue to work to try and improve that security with the courts, the court security committee that meets regularly between the county and the courts, and the DA and the public defender's office all get together to look at security, and we're trying our best to make sure this facility is as secure as possible. The facility, unfortunately, being the age it is not the most secure. So I just want to extend my thoughts out to the folks in the court building, and also thank the Sheriff's Department and the folks that run the security station and the white shirts that provide security around the building for their work. I'd also, in light of some of the events of the last week, like to ask people to get beyond, blame and, which side's done what, and who's responsible, and what the past history was. This effort to kind of put us on sides is bad for us. We need to unify ourselves, and I'd just like to read a couple quotes from Reverend Dr. King from a pretty famous speech of his. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Thank you.
All right. Next, we will move to item 4, which is emergency business. We do have an item before us. It is a letter to Governor Kate Brown regarding the policy option packages for the 2017 and 19 biennial budget that would backfill federal dollars which used to come to Oregon for purposes of coastal planning and technical assistance for coastal cities and counties. I'd like to welcome Alex Kyler, our Intergovernmental Relations Manager, and just state that I appreciate the work on this. Mr. Kyler, I was alerted to this effort by Tillamook County Commissioner Tim Josie, as they're working hard to find ways to replace that lost federal dollar so they can continue to do planning in their county. So with that, Mr. Kyler.
Thank you, Chair Stewart and board members. So before you, you do have a letter, a very brief letter to the governor advocating on behalf of the two proposed policy option packages that would backfill dollars that used to come to the state and then get passed through to local governments via a grant program. Those dollars used to come to the state of Oregon from the federal government. As a result of some water quality issues and lawsuits, the state of Oregon was deemed to, I guess apparently under federal law, take a 30% haircut for those particular federal funds. This has impacted coastal communities pretty negatively. I did have an email correspondence with the city manager in Florence about this decline in funding, and they've relied pretty heavily on this technical assistance grant program, and we're pleased to know that the board was reaching out to the governor with this kind of advocacy. I don't know what your preference is, Mr. Chair, on this letter. I did notice it was posted to the website. I'd be happy to read it into the record or at your pleasure to take any additional questions.
Yeah. Could you go ahead and just briefly read it, just in case, because it was just added, I think, a couple days ago.
Okay. So it's addressed, today's date, it's addressed to Governor Kate Brown, and it reads, Dear Governor Brown, it has come to our attention that the Department of Land Conservation and Development, LCDC, has submitted two policy option packages for the 2017-2019 biennial budget that would backfill federal dollars which used to come to Oregon for purposes of coastal planning and technical assistance for coastal cities and counties. The Lane County Board of Commissioners urges you to include these POPs into the budget that you develop and provide to the legislature. One POP would restore funding for 2 LCDC employees, while the other would enable the Technical Assistance Grant Program to continue to provide resources to local governments for land use planning and emergency preparations. Commissioner Bozovich, our representative to the Ocean Coastal Management Zone Association and who represents Western Lane County, regularly provides our board with updates regarding the complexities of coastal issues. Our ability to provide adequate local resources to our Land Management Division and the Lane County Sheriff's Office for these coastal issues leaves us in a pretty precarious situation that is unfair to the residents and businesses that live and work along Lane County's coastal zone. While this situation arose from a federal lawsuit and backwards federal policies that penalized Oregon rather than providing additional assistance for water quality issues, the fact of the matter is that it is the coastal residents who are bearing the brunt of that action. We hope that you will see the worthiness, as we do, of these proposals, and please know that we will advocate for these dollars when the Ways and Means process gets underway in 2017. Sincerely, Faye Stewart, Chair, Lane County Board of Commissioners.
Any questions or comments on the letter? Commissioner Bozovich?
So I'd just like to move approval of sending this letter to the governor.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Do we have further discussion? Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Alex, coming up on the 8th and 9th over at the Mill Casino will be the Oregon Coastal Summit. Assuming this passes today, and this will be into the record, is this something we can make sure that, and I'm sure Commissioner Bozovich will be communicating as well with we've got a strong legislative delegation obviously attending this Coastal Summit. I think it's going to make sure that they know that we're on record, but also that they have this information as well going into the session. So is that something we can absolutely communicate?
Chair Stewart and Commissioner Lakin, probably a good idea would be to recommend that we add a CC here to State Senator Arnie Roblin and State Senator Representative Caddy McCune, and I think that would help make sure that gets highlighted a little bit more. Those two are obviously going to be very present for that economic summit.
Mr. Bozovich, you good as the motion maker? I'm good as a second too to add the CC. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimous. And I'd like to, for the record, to show that Commissioner Farr is excused. Thank you. All right, we'll move to item 5. It's employee recognition. This is the opportunity for the administration staff to recognize individuals that are doing excellent work for the county. I'd like to turn this over to our acting county administrator, Mr. Rickoff.
Chair Stewart, members of the commission, please do not read anything into the fact that today all of the staff we will recognize are from the Department of Operations. It is merely a coincidence with having you here today. We'd like to start by inviting Rick Picorni and Donovan Dumeyer and Kim Menju up to the table. Chair Stewart, Commissioners, Rick Picorni was recently selected as the newest chair of the statewide Sex Offender Supervision Network. Officer Picorni has proven to be both competent and committed to our business, having been directly involved with the network for many years. We believe that the network is lucky to have Rick at the helm. In addition to his expertise in sex offender supervision, Rick is a valued trainer, a FAPO executive member, and has been instrumental in moving our policies and procedures forward. We found Rick to be a model of our brand and a credit to our agency. And with that, we would like to present him with this certificate. Rick? Come on up, let's all stand together. Let you and I get close.
Is Rick leaving? Just before we move to the next one, I wanted to also just point out that I think the first time I met Rick was I was on a ride along with the Sheriff's Department, and there was a call for assistance for his help with a situation with parole and probation folks they were working with. So I was really amazed at the professionalism and some of the situations that you place yourself in. Thank you for your work. I really appreciate it.
Now I'd like to have Cheryl Betchart join us. Chair Stewart, Commissioners, Cheryl is accepting recognition on behalf of her elections staff for their outstanding work during the May primary. On Elections Day, the team received 520 phone calls, issued 275 replacement ballots, and 20 challenged ballots. They assisted 167 customers who updated their registrations on that day and assisted more than 700 customers in total. In addition, they received a voter turnout of 57%. That's 126,234 ballots. They did this admirably. They did this with precision. They did this with timeliness. In the past 6 months, the elections staff have processed 65,000 transactions. The total voter registration is expected to increase to 235,000. It's currently at about 225,000. When I say election staff, we do need to recognize that we're talking about Cheryl and a team of 10 FTE. The deeds and records staff, in spite of the fact that they are continuing and we're busy processing 5,000 documents and 215 marriage licenses in the month of May, they too come over and contribute greatly to the work of elections. The 11 individuals really continue to do a remarkable job throughout the year. Again, that precision, that required timeliness is pretty outstanding when you consider how few staff we have available. We do have about 150 part-time employees that join us in that work, but remember that those 11 staff actually need to be involved in the recruiting, training, supervising, and managing of those 150 folks. So it certainly helps them in doing their work, but it's not without a cost to those individuals. With that, I'd like to thank Cheryl. I'm sorry the rest of the team can't join us, but they, of course, are busy at task. And before we conclude, I'd like to have County Council Steve Dingle join us for a moment.
If I could go quickly.
Just before we do.
Right before, I just have to say this, because I've known Dan and Cheryl Betchard long before I was ever elected to Lane County Board of Commissioners. In fact, Dan, first met her husband, Dan, when he was a loan officer at the old Centennial Bank. And I used to go in and visit when I owned my business over in Springfield. But the real reason why I like Dan and Cheryl, because their son is by far one of the best percussionist drummers I've ever seen, and he is really, really good. Not kidding. He plays professionally, plays in bands, he tours. He is a top-notch drummer. I've seen him play, and you want to see a young man not just play 32nd notes, but 64th notes? Their son does it, and he's a terrific percussionist drummer. Anyway, thank you.
Right?
No, it's beyond that.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Mr. Dingle?
Hold on just a moment. I believe we're going to...
We're going to try to call in Commissioner Farr. If you wait for just a second.
Commissioner Farr, it's Diana. You're in the meeting now.
Sorry, Diana, I'm adjusting my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, great. Then I'm on.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Commissioner Farr. We are in the tail end of recognizing employees. We now have with us Steve Dingle, who's going to talk a few minutes about Mr. Voorhees.
Good morning, Board.
Mr. Chair, I'll remain silent. Thank you.
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. I'm going to ask you to recognize some other employees. I'd like to request that you make a special recognition of Mr. Voorhees. I think I told you and notified you that Mr. Voorhees passed away on July 4th after a long battle with cancer. I did not have the privilege of knowing Mr. Voorhees as long as some of you did. But I can tell you, as an employee and a person, he was one of the most sincere and gentle and kind people I've ever met. When I sent out the notice, I think this just typifies it. I never heard Stephen complain once about his illness, and even when he was in the hospital, he was sending texts about the Coburg UGB case. And every time he left the office, including the last time that he left the office before he went into the hospital and never came back, he would always stop and say, "How's it going, boss?" Hang in there. Thinking of someone else even when he was in that condition. So what I'd like to do is I prepared an order, and just so you know, the intention is to hopefully have you folks vote and adopt it. Ms. Jones and I are going to make the arrangements to see that it's transferred to some high-quality paper and framed, and we plan to send it back to Stephen's mother, who's in Wisconsin. She's very elderly and can't travel. And Ms. Jones is going to make a DVD of this portion of the meeting. So again, to send it to his mother so that she can see what.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, just checking that it was still sounds like I'm hearing off right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how. Mr. Dingle's still communicating about Mr. Voorhees, I don't know if we can get the phone closer or how it would work. I don't know, maybe you could come up and use my microphone stand here to read the resolution or the recognition for quorum. Will that work for you, Commissioner Farr?
If that is convenient, otherwise I can catch up later on video.
No, this is all right. I can do this. So this is before the Board of Commissioners of Lane County, Oregon. It's order number 1607-12-10 in the matter of appreciation of the dedicated service provided by Stephen L. Voorhees to Lane County. Whereas Stephen L. Voorhees was hired by Lane County as an assistant county counsel on January 26th, 1987. Whereas Stephen L. Voorhees retired on June 29th, 2012, after 25 years, 5 months, and 4 days of honorable and dedicated service to the citizens of Lane County. And whereas Stephen L. Voorhees continued his service to the citizens of Lane County in retirement until his death on July 4th, 2016. Whereas Stephen L. Voorhees was recognized across the state of Oregon as one of the leading experts in the area of land use law. And whereas Stephen L. Voorhees provided invaluable legal analysis and wise counsel to many Lane County Board of Commissioners and Lane County departments over the years. And whereas Stephen L. Voorhees was the finest expression of a skilled and dedicated public servant. Whereas Stephen L. Voorhees was a well-liked and valued co-worker. And whereas Stephen L. Voorhees' legal skills, wise counsel, and most importantly, his kind and gentle spirit will be greatly missed by the Lane County Board of Commissioners, the employees of Lane County, and the citizens of Lane County. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners of Lane County offers their sincere and heartfelt thanks to Stephen L. Voorhees for all that he has done for the citizens of Lane County and his role in making Lane County a better place for everyone, and offers their deep and sincere condolences to his family and friends. Adopted this 12th day of July, 2016, Faye Stewart, Lane County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, Stephen. So at this time, I'd like to look to my colleagues for comments. I'd like to start with Commissioner Sorensen. Please.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Dingle. As the Lane County Council, you're one of many Lane County councils that Steve Voorhees worked for, and he served long and distinguished career here at Lane County. I've had the chance to work with him for over 19 years and really appreciated something you mentioned just now, which is that here he is in this contentious, anger-filled world of land use, which before I got involved in, I thought it was kind of nice and polite before I learned much more about it. But it's full of drama, really. People are having their property regulated, and often by government or by our government or by other governments, and he has to carefully explain to the commissioners as well as the public as well as the other governments and people involved what their rights are, what their rights aren't, and what his role as a lawyer was for us. And I just think that he was a very kind and generous person. And one of the things that you didn't mention about him that I think is worthy is that he was a very accomplished singer. And a lot of people knew of his singing and singing in various choirs and groups. And I think that really helped him as a person. It really helped him become that kind person. And here he is dealing with this very contentious topic. The other thing you mentioned that I think is also worthy of note, and that is just what a hard worker the guy was. I had some difficulty sometimes with his filing system, which resembled a stack of hay in a field, roughly. So in that sense, maybe that wasn't the best organization for me, but it was obviously worked well in his legal career. But I just think the guy was a really hard worker, and it was a privilege to work with him Thank you.
I guess I'd like to go next if I could. You know, I'm in my 12th year as a commissioner, and of course, Mr. Voorhees was here when I started. And as I think most people that take this job on, you're not a land use expert, and I have the pleasure of representing folks that need a lot of land use help and expertise. And I became very fond of Mr. Voorhees. He spent a lot of time with me to help educate me on the land use system. And I too wondered at times how he had his filing system work, but I was absolutely amazed every single time I'd go in there and he needed to find a document. He went exactly to where it was, which pile, where it was. I mean, it didn't take him a second to grab it, and it was absolutely amazing. What I truly cared most about him is when he was always thoughtful and caring about me, my family, always was asking. I have a family member that was dealing with cancer at the same time as Mr. Voorhees, and he always asked about my family member and deeply cared about folks and placed them above himself. He would always, I'd ask how he's doing, and he's like, "Oh, I'm doing great. You know, I'm just plugging along. We're working hard." And he simply just amazed me that he came in here the last few years and worked moving some very difficult items forward for this, you know, like Coburg and a couple other land use issues that were very, very complicated. Saw some victories there in the very end that I think saved the county some tremendous amount of money, and just incredible what he did in the face of adversity. And I'll definitely miss him, and definitely enjoyed his friendship. He was a true friend. Others? Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you, Steve, for bringing this up. And I mean, this one hit it pretty hard. I mean, it was almost 3 years ago that I lost my brother to cancer, and so this one hit pretty hard. But I would agree with both Faye and Pete. I found him to be just an incredibly honorable man, and I think what was interesting is you know, you get to know a lot of the land use attorneys here locally. I got to know them on both sides, my family's business, and then on the other side when we're battling. And the one thing that really came that I thought was incredible, it didn't matter who you spoke to, but the high respect these land use attorneys, whether it's Bill Close, Doug DePriest, I mean, you name them all, Mike Reeder, they had such high respect for Steve. I mean, as far as being a land use attorney, and that says a lot. And so that's one thing. But I think the thing I'll miss more than anything is I'm glad it was brought up about his love, or his beautiful singing voice, because as most folks know, I have quite a love for music myself, and as a longtime musician, we would go from land use to start talking about music, and those are some of my favorite conversations with Steve, just talking about, I said I can't sing worth a lick, but he could sing, and I said, you know, if you need a percussionist to back you up, just let me know, and I'll be there. And but we would end up just having more conversations about just music, maybe more than anything else, and which I thought was beautiful, and so I think I'm going to miss him greatly, and just that the one thing you mentioned, never complained. It was always stunning to me, never complained at all, and but just that. You're gonna miss that deep voice of Steve Voorhees. It's you used to enjoy that, especially when he's down here going over the Coburg plan. That deep voice of Steve Voorhees, discussing that. We'll miss that greatly. But I'm just gonna miss Steve the man. Thank you,
Mr. Bozovich.
Thank you. So, like I said, you know, both of us are sort of newbies on the board, so we only worked directly with Steve for the last. Was it now 5.5 years? But I spent a career doing land use as a civil engineer, so I was kind of been exposed to every land use attorney, I think, in Lane County, and also, you know, did expert testimony in mandamus procedures and things that people probably don't even understand in land use. But Steve was definitely a consummate professional in land use law and really knowledgeable, and I appreciated working with him in that knowledge. But probably what stands out the most with me is what everybody said is he was one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. Always had a smile on his face, never complained. And the whole time, during his illness, you would not have known that he was suffering from such a terrible, debilitating disease, other than the fact it looked like he was buying his suits too big, towards the end. That's really, that was the only hint you had. You would never have known, never complained. To the last time I saw him in the office, it was a smile, how you doing, Jay? Not a word about his own health or anything. Truly a gentle, giving person that never complained, and a very knowledgeable person too. So he will be missed here in Lane County, and I think I appreciate you bringing forward this recognition. His family deserves to know just what a wonderful man and how well liked he was here at Lane County.
Okay. Commissioner Farr, would you like to say any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say professionally, I worked peripherally with Mr. Voorhees for many years as a Eugene City Councilor, observing his work and appreciating the great work he did. The last few years as a county commissioner, I had more exposure to him. What I can say is that the professional work that he did allowed me to see a historical context regarding land use, and allowed me to place things into perspective that otherwise I may not have been able to understand without the calm and deliberate way that Mr. Voorhees was able to explain things to me, a layperson, in terms that I understood. Truly great in that respect. But the main thing that I'd like to say about Mr. Voorhees is the impact that he had on the men and women who worked around him here at Lane County. He leaves a deep and lasting impact on the folks that you and I, that the board and I work daily with, and that he worked daily with. Mr. Voorhees was not only a professional. Mr. Voorhees was a personal counselor. Mr. Voorhees was someone who, as Commissioner Lycan said, you could talk about a many wide range of different issues beyond the scope of work. And I know that as much as I will miss Mr. Voorhees, there are people on our staff here at Lane County who feel a deep sense of loss and will miss him for a long time to come. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So with that, if there's no further comments, I would entertain a motion to approve this recognition order for Mr. Voorhees.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the resolution in order.
Second.
Okay. Second by Commissioner Farr. Any final discussion, thoughts? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And no opposed. Passed unanimous.
Thank you both
Mr.
for the
Dino.
time.
Okay. So with that, we'll move to our consent calendar, item number 6. This is a time when the board, this is a consent calendar, is considered to be routine. Approval of items that come before the board on a regular basis, our minutes and et cetera. These items are able for folks to view at lanecounty.org under the agenda. You can go to the consent calendar or any item on the agenda and click on the item itself and review the material if there's any questions. So if there's no comments on the consent calendar, I would accept a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr?
I move approval of the July 13, 2016 consent calendar.
Okay, it's the July 12th. Hey, do we have a second?
July 12th, thank you.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
And no opposed. Passes unanimous. So we'll move to item 7, which is the Sheriff's Office. It's Order 16-07-12-06 in the matter of awarding a contract to Motorola Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $724,217.50 for the purchase of P25 subscriber radios for the Lane County Adult Corrections Facility in the UHF system, addition to the Vitus site, and delegating authority to the county administrator to execute contract documents. Is Debbie with us today? Jim, would you like to come forward? Marks? Mr. Brown, too. Welcome.
We're here before you today. Oh,
Good morning.
Morning.
So we're here before you today to ask for you to approve this motion.
Can you introduce yourself first?
Jim Marks. I'm a Lane County employee, IS. I actually work for the Lane Radio Interoperability Group. I'm the system manager, so I report to eWeb, City of Eugene, Lane County, and Springfield.
I'm Larry Brown, Lieutenant, Lane County Sheriff's Office. I'm also the Vice Chair of LRIG.
So I report to him, kind of. All right. So we're here before you to ask you to approve this motion. There's two parts to this. One is purchasing radios to replace the failing radios at the jail, as well as the second part, which is to fill in a coverage gap for the LRIG radio system. That helps two of the partners, of the LRIG partners specifically, and all of them in general. So, Commissioner, the eWeb team has very poor coverage in the Leesburg power plant and really cannot use the LRIG radio system with a handheld. Deputies in that area cannot leave their vehicle and get good coverage with a handheld radio. So the coverage in that area right now comes from Blanton, from the west, shooting up the valley, and then from Mount Hagen, shooting west down the valley. Due to topography, we've got gaps in there. And so Verizon has a tower site that Lane Fire Defense Board went into and co-located last year. We would like to co-locate there as well. So that's the part there. That particular location shoots down into Vida, shoots down into Leesburg, and solves our coverage problem. So is there anything more we can help you with to understand this?
Okay, questions for staff? Not seeing any. So I would entertain a motion to approve Order 16-07-12-06.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Farr, did you have any questions for this item?
None at all, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Bozovich?
Yeah, I just want to say, as a former eWeb employee, I'm well aware of the radio gap in that area, particularly seeing I had a construction project going on at the Walterville power plant, and it was nearly impossible to communicate sometimes. So I appreciate you guys filling in that hole.
We're very appreciative of it too, because this is something from in 2004 when our system started to get built. Vida was a site that was identified that we needed that site, but we had to cut back because we didn't have the funding. So we're basically fixing the problem now, which not only helps Public Works and the Sheriff's Office, but eWeb is probably our biggest beneficiary of this.
And I think, one of the things, excuse me, that people need to look at is just how much it costs just to communicate as a law enforcement system. Sometimes people wonder why it cost us approximately $130,000 to put a deputy on the street. Well, when you look at a radio contract for roughly $750,000 for just part of our system, and understanding what it takes to get secure, reliable communications, which is so important, was shown, during the Twin Towers, what happens when you don't have clear and good communications between law enforcement and other agencies. This is really important, and it's just part of what it costs to really have an adequate law enforcement system.
Okay. Other comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? There's none opposed. Passed unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 8, which is our county administration items. We'll start off with announcements. Mr. Rickhoff, you have announcements today?
Chair Stewart, Commissioners, first of all, my apologies for running a bit late this morning. I was on the phone with the County Administrator, Steve Mokrahysky, and I am tremendously pleased to say he'll be back on Thursday, and we'll be attending certainly afternoon meetings as well as the joint elected officials meeting Thursday evening. I'm going to apologize in advance. I will be running late again this afternoon. I have a meeting with the City of Eugene to plan Thursday's joint elected officials meeting. That starts at 1 p.m. It should be over by 2 p.m. and I will join you in progress. So David Reeser, Becky Taylor will start their public works items without me. Again, my apologies. I know I do not need to remind you that the Lane County Fair starts next week, July 20th through the 24th. The public input meetings regarding the proposed changes to the waste management services begin tomorrow evening with the Upper McKenzie Community Center meeting at 5:30 p.m. They continue on the 20th in Walton, the 27th in Cresswell, and then concluding on July 28th here at Harris Hall. All of those meetings are at 5:30 p.m. As I stated earlier, the joint elected officials meeting is this Thursday, 5:30 here in Harris Hall. I look forward to having that meeting. I want to thank Commissioner Bosovic because I too come to you without an answer, but I would like to flag that we as a community, we as a nation are experiencing a time of stress and tension when it comes to race and ethnicity, as well as a growing divide between those in public service and the communities we serve. These tensions are increasing. Words and acts of intolerance are on the rise. The stone throwing, the literal stone throwing incident through the business windows, mostly Asian community members' business windows, have a chilling effect on all of us, but particularly on the Asian Pacific Island community. The threats experienced by an African American community using the imagery of lynching in 2016 has an impact far beyond the family itself. These incidents, do run the risk of dividing us, and it's incumbent on us all to strive for that unity. So thank you, Commissioner Bosovic, and thank you all for the service you continue to provide that do bring us together, that do unite our community, and that do try to answer that question of why we continue to struggle with our differences as opposed to sharing our similarities. With that, I'd like to move on.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Rickhoff? Comments? All right. Thank you so much for your thoughts there on that last topic. Definitely something that has me wondering where we're headed, and it would be nice if we would come together as one instead of further division. So hopefully we'll see us come together with these issues. So next we'll move to item B, which is Order 16-07-12-07. It's in the matter of the approval to sign a 5-year contract with Clear Ballot for vote tabulation equipment, software, and related services in the amount of $472,425. I'd like to welcome our county clerk, Cheryl Betchart. Welcome back.
Thank you. Scoot up here. Okay. So I'm here before you today to request, as you mentioned, approval of a 5-year contract with Clear Ballot for the purchase of new tabulation equipment, software, and related services. And this money is currently in the adopted budget, and we would like to request that this contract be signed as soon as possible. Just to give you a little bit of background, we have been with election software and system for the last 5.5 years, and recently found out that the adjudication piece of the software, which I'll explain to you in a minute, will not be something that they are going to be able to deliver in time for the general election, and it's unclear at this point whether it can be certified at some point in the future. Clear Ballot is a company that has been certified for election equipment here in Oregon since May of 2015. They recently had an update to software that was certified in February of this year. There are 7 Oregon counties that used their equipment for the primary election. 2 of those are Multnomah and Washington County, which are larger than our county here in Lane. So there are 2 main reasons that I am wanting to go with this equipment, and the immediate nature of this is because our contract maintenance was paid through June 30th, and then we chose to, because ES&S was not able to come through with the deliverables that we were expecting for future elections, so we chose to terminate our contract with them, and that will end on August 15th. So with that, I am proposing Clear Ballot, and the 2 main reasons are the increased transparency with the ballot adjudication piece. Clear Ballot offers a software-based election system. It uses off-the-shelf scanners for tabulating and running the ballots through. And just for an example, the primary election that we just conducted, our opening pre-inspection teams reviewed over 7,000 ballots for the election by hand. These were ballots that were set aside that needed to be either duplicated or enhanced, so changed from the original state as received from the voter. With the Clear Ballot system, everything is run through the scanner and a digital image is taken, and then the adjudication is an online computer-based system for 2 resolution teams to review. So we would no longer have to process those ballots manually, so it would increase the efficiency of that operation, and it would allow us to, as soon as we started early scanning of ballots, it would allow us to do the adjudication of those ballots ongoing.
Just getting a little bit of feedback, I believe.
Diana's fixing it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Ah.
So one of the advantages is with the increased transparency and the ballot adjudication is to keep the ballot in the original state as the voter sent it to us. So that is one of the advantages of going with this system. So we would no longer have to hand duplicate or enhance, ink enhance, or tape enhance ballots. We would have teams do those on the computer in a standalone system that is not accessible on the internet or anywhere, as our current system is. In addition to that, with our old system, we would receive about 1,000 ballots run through the tabulators that we would have to manually review by a supervisory team, myself and another supervisor. And so we always have teams opposite political party review ballots. And when that process happens, we would be holding those ballots until after the election, when we had time to actually physically review them to determine whether they had to be enhanced, duplicated, or counted as an overvote, if that was the intent of the voter. We would no longer have to wait to handle those ballots. They would all be run through the tabulator, and again, we would use 2 resolution stations, 2 people, opposite party affiliation, that could process those on an ongoing basis. So it means we can get ballots processed quickly and then not having to hold anything until after the election, depending on how many come in election day, of course. But that's the intent. So the efficiency will also be that every time any ballot has to be adjudicated, there's a tracking log that would go with it, so you can see how the original ballot came in, you can see what the adjudication team did with resolution, and you can see how it was counted. So you could, if you wanted to look at every single ballot, you could look at every single ballot when it's certified. So that process is a big change for us with the Clear Ballot system. It also includes software for write-in adjudication. The write-ins for this last election took us 5 days, over 20 people coming in to prepare those write-ins for the write-in teams. We had 11 no candidate filed positions for this election that all had to be done by hand With Clear Ballot, we would be able to, since everything can be scanned, you can do the online adjudication for the write-ins as well. So we feel the time would be cut down to probably 1 to 2 days for processing of write-ins versus 5 or more days with as many people as we are using. So there's definitely the transparency comes the tracking of all those ballots with this adjudication piece, which is one of the big advantages to going with the Clear Ballot system. In addition to that, we definitely will be seeing some cost savings and time savings. The system uses off-the-shelf Fujitsu scanners. Right now we have 4 scanners that require special expertise to maintain and utilize these scanners. The Fujitsu scanners are just regular scanners that we would be able to go from 2 operators per machine to 1 person per machine. We would be able to go from 4 scanners down to 3 scanners. So there would be some savings cost-wise with that and with the easeability with using these scanners. Another cost savings would be in the ballot on demand availability. In this last fiscal year, I had $50,000 to $75,000 that we anticipated spending for ballot on demand system, which would have been tied with our old ES&S system. With Clear Ballot, you can just use a regular duplexing printer, and if you run out of ballots or you're getting low on ballots, you can print them as you need them. We have often, for the primary, we had over 300 ballot styles, and with all the last-minute registrations for the different political parties, I ordered ballots 5 different times from our vendor because of the increase in registration that was unanticipated due to motor voter and just the nature of the election. With this system, we would have the printer, and if we were seeing that we were low, we wouldn't have to have all this stock for each ballot style just sitting on the shelves, wondering if we're going to use it or not use it, or knowing which styles to use or not use. We could actually print those as we go and retain a smaller inventory from the time that we print the ballots, which is 60 days before the election, through the election day. So we definitely will realize some cost savings there. The opening pre-inspection time, we're expecting to be cut in half. This election, we used 4 days for opening pre-inspection, 16 teams, so nearly 60 people. There would no longer be inspection of the ballot because everything would be scanned, and anything that's identifiable as unreadable would go to the resolution teams for adjudication. So we're expecting that the opening would take half of the time is what we're expecting. The annual maintenance would also decrease from $53,000 a year to $44,000 a year. So in summary, the transparency in keeping the ballot intact from the original ballot as received from the voter, and cutting down some costs and efficiency, and having a need now to go to a new system that has the online adjudication are the reasons that we're going with Clear Ballot. And I would like to answer any questions that you have at this point. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Questions? Commissioner Lyken?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Cheryl, I noticed that in your report it stated that Clear Ballot equipment and software was certified in the state of Oregon in February 2016, and it was successfully utilized by 7 counties, and including the 2 largest, Multnomah and Washington. And so I don't know, have you had a chance to speak with their clerks on how they how they viewed how they viewed this, and do they view it as not only something that obviously they want to continue using, but is this something that maybe other counties in the state where it'd be more where that added consistency working with the Secretary of State's office?
Chair Stewart, Commissioner Lyken, Commissioners, yes, Clear Ballot invited Lane County and others to attend a post-election meeting with the 7 counties.
Oh, good.
And we had that about 2 weeks ago and reviewed for a half a day everything that went well, things that, any bugs that were found, items that wanted to be changed. Overall, everybody was extremely happy with it. There are 2 other counties besides Lane County that are now entertaining the idea of switching, and so they're going before their commissioners and hoping to get it in place for November. as well. Clear Ballot has already identified 10 minor things in relation to reporting and just improve easeability, less steps in a task, that they are asking and getting approval from the state of Oregon, and they expect that software update to be in place for the November election already. So they're very responsive to what the counties are experiencing, and I appreciate that, since it's a tight time frame for everybody. So
That's great to hear. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Other comments? Commissioner Farr, do you have any questions, if you could hear that?
Yes, I can. Thanks. No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve Order 16-07-12-07, matter of approval of signing a 5-year contract with Clear Ballot for vote tabulation equipment, software, and related services.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Further discussion, Commissioner Sorensen?
So one of the benefits of this will be that instead of manually taking that ballot that needs to be looked at more carefully, people won't actually carry that ballot to a table and then look at it, because they'll have an actual screen they can look at. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Yeah, and that seems like that will save a lot of time right away. Will the actual ballots themselves be maintained, or will they be thrown away?
Chair Stewart, Commissioner Sorensen, Commissioners, we do have a retention requirement. The ballots have a certain retention period that we follow based on statute.
If there is a recount request, what will be the record of the ballot? Will it be the screen of it, or will it be the actual paper that the voter voted?
Well, currently, the statutes require that we recount the manual ballot, the hard physical ballot. So our county clerks are looking at possibly making some recommendations in the next legislative session on trying to do something a little bit more efficient in that manner. But currently, you look at the physical ballot and recount those physical ballots.
Now, we know you had recounts for the commissioner elections back in 2014. Have you had any other recounts recently?
The only recount that we had for the primary was a precinct committee person, and that was the only recount.
Okay. And do you have an overall ballpark number of what the change will be in terms of savings? If you need for fewer people, because you have the efficiency of the screening system, is there going to be any savings, or are we just getting that many more voters and there really won't be any savings because we're going to have that many more voters because more people are registering to vote and more people are voting and more people have questions about their voting rights?
Well, the 7 counties that utilized Clear Ballot are putting together their analysis for the cost savings. So we definitely know that the opening pre-inspection period that Multnoma's identified, it took half the time than what they had. So we're just now putting those costs together. But I definitely know that the maintenance will be at least $10,000 a year. The ballot on demand system that we would have initially spent $50,000 to $75,000, we will not be spending. And we'll be looking at our ballot inventory and the wages, of course, to see what those benefits are going to be realized. But I definitely think those numbers are going to continue to climb.
Good. Well, that's all good news. And I think that transparency, or might be even called recording, the ballots aren't going to be transparent, but the process will be more transparent in that the record of the ballot will not be, there won't be a revote. I'll use the term revote. I'm not sure what the proper term is that's been used in prior elections, where the voter smudges up the ballot or slops coffee on it or something, and the election workers have to actually look at that ballot and determine the voter intent. Again, 2 people of opposite parties have to determine that to make sure that they're in fact sending that record through the scanner, and now you won't have to really do that.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's good news. That's very good news. And I just want to compliment you on the way that you've handled these more contentious issues, because I know that you probably get a lot of people calling or writing or critical of you, and I just want to say I know that you do try to do your very best, and the process of the transparency of the process, I think, has really raised public confidence in the voting system. The one final thing I do is once you get that new system up and running, if you can work with Ms. Ashbridge and our public information people, maybe do another video to show people how the election process works. I think that's a very very good way to show people the way the system works. Thank you.
Other questions or comments on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passed unanimous. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Right, next we have two items. Whoops.
Like we lost Pat.
We lost him. Okay, well, we'll play it by ear and see if we can get him back. I'd like to bring Mr. Kyler forward. Would you like me to read both these first and then discuss them, or do you want to do them one at a time?
Mr. Chair, I think the best thing to do is if I could introduce them both, and then I'll turn it over to Andy for some procedural issues. There may be an amendment to one of the versions.
Okay. Would you like me to read them first for the record?
Yeah, I mean, legally you can handle them. I handle it either way, but it makes sense to read them both now.
So I'll take a moment here and read both these, and then we can turn it over to staff. So item C is the first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 16-03. It's in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to adopt a local tax on marijuana sales in unincorporated Lane County of 3% if approved by the Lane County voters in November 2016. Item D is first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 16-4 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to adopt a local tax on marijuana sales in unincorporated Lane County of 3% if approved by the Lane County voters in November 2016. So
I think we're going to try and get Pat back on the line here.
Hey, maybe it worked.
I'm here.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner Farr.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I hit the hang up button instead of the mute button, and I was an I on 07.
Okay, perfect. Then we have read into the record the items C and D, which has to do with ordinances 1603 and 1604 in adopting the local tax on marijuana sales. So this time I'm going to turn over to staff for staff report.
You might want
to. Mr. Chair, a request, if I may, and pardon my interruption, but can you ask staff to speak directly into the mic? I was having a little trouble hearing Ms. Betrart.
And you might want to move that back up on the shelf. I know I've been on the phone for a meeting before. It's really hard.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex Kyler, your Intergovernmental Relations Manager. Here on the two items you've described, Ordinance 1604 and 1603. This is a follow-on to your June 21st meeting where we spoke about the state statute that allows for the procedure whereby a local government may tax marijuana at the retail sale of marijuana items at the rate of 3%, and it requires the passage of an ordinance and then the referral of that ordinance to the voters during the next general election. And at that meeting, you had discussed the question of subsequent revenue if approved by the voters and how that might be handled, and further directed that staff come back with two ordinances, one which restricts the revenue to certain services and one which keeps the revenue unrestricted. So just to clarify, 1603 has the restricted revenue, 1604 has the non-restricted revenue item, and there has been some discussion since that meeting. We had talked about 3 different splits of revenue in the restricted version during that meeting. Subsequent, there was brought up that there is another agency within the county that deals with the impacts of legalized recreational marijuana, and that is the Public Works Department, especially Land Management Division with their nuisance code enforcement as well as zoning enforcement. And so the suggestion was that there might be a 4th way to provide dollars to specific services within the county. So I think with that background, I should probably turn it over to probably Andy first to speak to how to any sort of procedures that are necessary if you want to insert that 4-way split rather than a 3-way split into the 1603 version.
Yeah, to the extent you want to, if you want to amend 1603 to provide 4 options for distribution of money rather than 3, and have that done as part of today's first reading, you can do that as long as you read into the record all of the changes verbatim, and that would be what is reflected on that sheet that Alex has presented or provided to you this morning.
And then further, I thought it would be well to have Christine Moody, the financial planning manager, here just to discuss a little bit of the language that we've come up with and the pros and cons of the different versions with respect to restricting revenue versus non-restricting revenue.
Thank you, Alex. Chair Stewart, Commissioners. So I'm here probably mainly for questions that you might have, but I do believe there was some discussion about whether there should be language about where you're putting the funds, as in type of fund, which you've seen in some of our other revenue measures where we talk about putting it in a special revenue fund. I think we've drafted the language here so that it's a little not quite as restrictive. We already will put the funds wherever the programs are. And it's from a financial standpoint, we look at predominance of revenue. So I would just ask that from an administrative side, we can always account for funds. We do millions of dollars of grants every year, so there's no concern that we wouldn't be able to tell you that it was used for what it was supposed to be used for. But I would hate to see a case where we have a service that has a piece of money in a special kind of fund and the rest of the service exists in another fund. For example, land management is in an enterprise fund. So technical things that just from an administrative side would be easier if we just don't make the language too tight there to make it restrictive on our staff doing the services.
Okay. So I'll look to my colleagues for discussion. So there's we got a document here that adds an additional area for the resources to be spent. Do you want to discuss that, Commissioner Bozovich?
Thank you, and I specifically asked staff to have this language drafted.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, could Commissioner Bozovich speak a little more directly to the mic? I'm hearing about every third word.
Okay, I'll try and do that. So I specifically asked staff to draft this revised language, and I'm not sure if Commissioner Farr has it available to him, but in the 1603 ordinance, it currently designates any tax receipts to 3 departments and a third. I'm proposing to add a 4th and do it in quarters. Partly because the majority of the work that I have personally seen come from the addition of recreational marijuana in our county has been to our zoning enforcement staff. And it's been around the issues of rural residents contacting me about a marijuana grow going on next door, and there's some issue with it, and it hasn't been odor, which is the famous one that people mostly are concerned about. What I've had complaints about is illegal camping, and other issues like that, traffic, some other issues, and it's usually around the workers that are located on the site temporarily or permanently, and particularly some of these sites don't even have a dwelling on them. So we end up with folks camping on a piece of property. It doesn't even have an approved septic system, no dwellings, and the only people that have the ability, where the enforcement of that happens is in land management. And that's where the impact is. So I'm proposing that we designate at least some funds to come to land management. Of course, we're all pretty well aware we have no idea what kind of receipts this will generate, and whether it will be that impactful. But I think it's proper to try and distribute the funds to the agencies that are going to see the impact. And I think adding land management, and particularly their zoning enforcement folks, is a prudent place to have the funds go.
Okay. Mr. Kyler?
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think the ordinances that I've seen from around the state thus far have not necessarily earmarked these dollars. And I just wanted to point out that I think through the budget process, you've got the ability to make these same kinds of split, perhaps with some additional flexibility. So I think there's really, at the pleasure of the board, whether you want to sort of get into the prescription that is the language in front of you with respect to 1603 that really prescribes where the dollars go, or via the annual budget committee process that you've just gone through, and have a discussion with the budget committee about how to allocate those dollars. So it might be a little bit more able to respond to various needs with the latter example. It's just, like, again, it's sort of at the pleasure of the board, the way you want to go with this one.
So in agenda setting, the recommendation by staff was to actually see both these items move forward for public hearing, and then we get to hear from the public comment as to, do they want to see the funds restricted, not restricted, whether they want the thing to go to the voters or not. So I was under the premise that we were considering sending them both for public hearings.
And I think that makes an enormous amount of sense. Just for clarification purposes, you've got on the record the comments about the difference between the two.
Okay. Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree, and I think sending both forward would be, I think, appropriate. Because for Lane County, we're talking about unincorporated Lane County, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
And if I remember correctly, Councilor Surratt finally brought something up to the city of Eugene, because I want to tell you right now, if I'm in the business and Eugene does not adopt this tax, guess where I'm citing the business? And so I don't know. That's something I'm hoping that maybe through cell meetings, this type of thing, that we can maybe get an idea of maybe where the city of Eugene is going on this. Because if they do not adopt some sort of tax here, you're going to see the green crosses up all over the place, and or some sort of business entity inside the city of Eugene. That'll leave. Well, Springfield is they're moving forward and adopting. I think other communities are. So so I like the idea of moving both forward. I think that makes sense. I appreciate the work here that Commissioner Bozovich has put forth in this, because I think having them both, it's going to be really key for us to figure out where Eugene's going to go on this, because if they decide not to, then our collection is probably going to be pretty minimal. And it probably wouldn't make sense to have a percentage going here, here, and here. So I like the idea of moving both forward. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Farr, do you have any? Yes, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I am able to see the text of Commissioner Bozovich's recommendation, and I do concur with it. I believe the 4 points that he makes are well stated and give us a little bit of greater latitude as far as how to work underneath those 4 points. So I am in concurrence with the recommendations that Commissioner Bozovich makes.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. So I would I would agree with the agenda team that we should move both of these forward to public hearings and hear from the public about whether we should designate or not designate, because I think that's important in our decision process, because we want to put this on the ballot in a way that we know, eventually we hope that it will pass. And whether we designate funds or not designate funds, I think will be important to the public. So giving them the ability to comment on both before we adopt and move forward to the ballot, at that time we can move just one to the ballot. So with that, I would recommend that when we do the motion for 1603 that we read with the amendment, the first reading.
Okay. So I just had a couple quick refresher items from the previous. So it was my understanding that presently the state collects a 25% tax on this product right now. Is that correct?
At the moment, that's correct.
And then it changes, is it January 1st to 17%?
That's correct. It drops to 17%. I believe that actually the way, if OLCC issues a new license today, so if a business is in operation today under the new license, which they're on the verge of, that will start at 17%. I may be inaccurate on that detail, but certainly by January 1st, all the retailers will be collecting at the state tax will be the 17% rate.
Okay, so then if this is after January 1st and they're 17% and this is approved by the voters, it would bring it up to a total of 3% in the unincorporated sales. Is that correct?
Correct. Unincorporated. This addresses unincorporated Lane County only.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the sites, but I think there's probably one in Dexter. That was a facility that we approved or was brought to the board. So, I'm thinking that 3%, 3 cents on the dollar. I don't know that the folks from Dexter are going to get in their car and drive to Eugene to buy product, but that might be, I guess, a consideration that they figure. But so I'm not too sure that the 3% is going to be a deal breaker in your location of your facility, but it might be. All right. So other comments? So with that, I guess if you'd like, I'd read in the. Somebody want to make a motion for item 16-03, including the proposed changes? Commissioner Bozovich?
So I'd like to move approval of the first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 1603. And do we have a date and time on that?
It's July 26th, and I would imagine it's 1:30.
It can be any time of day the board prefers. We've usually done 1:30 for land use matters. This comes under county admin, so whatever the county administrator's preference would be, I think, or the board.
Let's do it for 1:30. So we set the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So move the first reading, setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 1603 for July 26 at a 1:30 time certain, in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to adopt a local tax on marijuana sales in unincorporated Lane County of 3% if approved by the Lane County voters in November 2016, with the following amendment to the text as published, that the dedicated revenue allocation will be 25% for the provision of county public safety services related to the enforcement and prosecution of driving while under the influence of intoxicant laws. B, 25% for the provision of county public health services related to the establishing foundational capabilities and foundational programs to improve the health of the residents of Lane County. C, 25% for the provision of community mental health services in accordance with the comprehensive local plan and in conjunction with the coordinated care organization servicing Lane County, and adding D, 25% for the provision of planning and enforcement of zoning regulations related to the growing, processing, wholesaling, and retailing of marijuana items in accordance with Chapter 16 of the Lane County Code.
Do we have a second? Just a second.
If I might, one discrepancy, I think you may want to reread paragraph C. I think you substituted a word for coordination. I think you.
Oh, sorry. So paragraph C, 25% for the provision of community mental health services in accordance with the comprehensive local plan and in coordination with the coordinated care organization servicing Lane County.
Thank you. So do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah. Further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And no opposed. It passes unanimous. So then we have item D, which is the first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing for ordinance 16-04 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 4 to adopt a local tax on marijuana sales in unincorporated Lane County of 3% if approved by the Lane County voters in November 2016, setting the second reading and public hearing for July 26th, 1:30 p.m. at Harris Hall. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, we'll move to item 9, which is human resources. It's order 16-07-12-08. It's in the matter of documenting the county administrator's annual performance evaluation and instructing human resources and county council regarding revision of the employment agreement. I'd like to welcome Marcia Edwards, our director, and Mr. Dingle, our legal counsel. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Stewart and Commissioners. I want to share a little bit of an update with you since I was here on June 28th. On that date, the Board of Commissioners deemed the County Administrator's second annual performance evaluation successful and approved the adoption of a salary range. The Board requested at that time that the Board Chair and Vice Chair meet with the Human Resources Director to discuss.
Mr. Chair, would you ask Ms. Edwards to talk up a little bit?
Okay.
People don't usually
Can
ask
we
me
give
to
you a
do that.
different mic?
Thank you.
One that's corded, maybe?
The one in front of Mr. Dingle has got a cord on it.
Better? Better, Commissioner Farr?
Can you hear Marcia, Pat?
I think they're better. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'll just run over that one more time. This is an update to the June 22nd meeting. The Board of Commissioners deemed the County Administrator's second annual performance evaluation successful and approved the adoption of a salary range at that time. The Board requested that the Board Chair and Vice Chair meet with the HR Director to discuss step placement and the corresponding effective date. The Board asked that a recommendation of step placement and the corresponding effective date be brought back before the Board today, July 12th, 2016. I can give you a little bit of the history that led us up to this point, if that would help.
Okay, please.
Mr. Moker Heisky began his tenure as Lane County Administrator on May 5th, 2014, and that initial employment term was set at 2 years with an annual renewal thereafter. Mr. Moker Heisky's employment contract does not contain a provision regarding how merit increases may occur. Such a provision does exist for the other positions that report to the Board, including County Counsel and the Internal Performance Auditor. On December 2nd, 2014, the Board met with Mr. Moker Heisky to provide feedback and set goals for the first annual evaluation. On June 23rd, 2015, Mr. Moker Heisky received his first annual performance evaluation. It was deemed successful. As a result, the Board of Commissioners instructed staff to bring forward a potential method for making future merit adjustments to the County Administrator's compensation, and a subcommittee comprised of the Chair and Vice Chair was formed to discuss potential options. In the course of following the Board's direction, Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, also known as Fox Lawson, determined that in comparison to Lane County's 5 comparator counties, Clackamas County, Deschutes County, Jackson County, Marion County, and Washington County, the county administrator's salary is 14.1%, which is a correction from the June 28th order, under market. Mr. Mokrahysky deferred discussion and action regarding the framework for merit and/or market adjustments to his compensation, preferring to resolve other compensation issues for non-rep employees and ensure budget stabilization for the coming fiscal year. Mr. Mokrahysky has received no merit adjustments since his hire in May 2014. On December 15, 2015, the board adopted the goals they would use as a foundation for the 2016 performance evaluation. On June 28, 2016, Mr. Mokrahysky received his second annual performance evaluation, and it was deemed successful. And again, on June 28th, the board asked that Chair Stewart and Vice Chair Farr meet with the HR Director to discuss appropriate step placement and a corresponding effective date. So prepared some options that came out of that meeting. Option 1 is to place the county administrator at step 8 of the salary range with an effective date of May 6, 2016. This was the preferred option. And if this option is preferred by the board, staff will prepare a revised employment agreement describing the method by which merit adjustments will occur, the step placement, and the effective date. Option 2 is to place the county administrator on an alternate step and effective date. If this option is preferred, staff will prepare a revised employment agreement describing the method by which merit adjustments will occur, the step placement, and effective date. And the recommendation by staff is that the board approve option number 1.
Okay. Thank you. So I appreciate it. I believe you recapped our conversation. We did meet, Commissioner Farr and I did meet with Ms. Edwards and Mr. Rickoff to discuss this and gave direction. Both of us felt that we would stay within the confines that was recommended by the how far Mr. Mokrahysky was out of market compared to the averages. It was brought up that there was some discussion about some other salaries that we were aware of in different areas, like the city of Springfield, the city of Eugene. Also this last week, I think it was publicized where eWeb's director was just signed a contract for, I believe, $260,000 salary. So I think that in light of the fact that at least myself, and I will let Commissioner Farr speak for himself, that we felt that with the great work that Mr. Mokrahysky's done, bringing this organization around, turning us around the corner to dealing with our structural deficit, which quite frankly we weren't too sure that we'd ever be able to deal with, and the great savings, being able to reduce, bring our budget within what we started with, a $6 million hole. We chipped away at $4 million of that, and hopefully we'll address the other 2 next year within our ability. No positions. We cut 22 positions, but not a single person lost their job through different programs that were instituted. Savings in healthcare costs. I mean, he's really done an incredible job. Chose not to have a conversation at his first year review as to compensation. He didn't feel like, with the organization where it was at, that he wanted to lead by example, and didn't feel like for him that a salary increase at that time was warranted. So knowing all that he hasn't had an increase in 2 years, that he's out of market, we just brought forward a proposal that would bring him into market and hopefully keep him in market through the next few years of his tenure. So, Commissioner Farr, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You summarized the discussion that we had. And a few things. I just restate some of the things that I said a week ago. If we consider the distance that we've traveled in the last 4 years in terms of not only achieving financial stability in very difficult circumstances, but also stability in staff and moving forward on a number of different fronts. I'll point to behavioral health as well as access and intergovernmental coordination and communication, cooperation. I believe that Mr. Mokrzycki has done a stellar job, and that bringing in more closely into parity with not just the comparables, but with the other agency leaders in our local area. I think that moving to step 8, as we're discussing, is an appropriate step at this point in time.
Thank you.
If I could offer just one more piece of information.
Please.
Moving the county administrator to step 8 would still leave him 4% below market for his salary.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
you bet.
So, the agenda team has brought this item forward as requested. I'd look to my colleagues for further comments. Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you. So I want to start out my comments with just clarifying that I hold Mr. Mokrzycki in the highest esteem, and I think his performance as administrator has been exemplary. But I am concerned about going to step 8. I made my concern, public last meeting. I believe step 7 is adequate as we look at labor contracts we've signed over the last several years and what those annual increases are, and also as we look at how we dealt with the non-rep move from, as we move to new salary structures with the non-reps, we didn't skip a step. And I'm just not terribly comfortable with moving directly to step 8. I would be fully supportive of adopting this as step 7. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm comfortable with the recommendation.
Any others?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, we had our review of Mr. Mokrzycki's performance, and I totally agree with what Ms. Edwards recounted that, but our real focus today is this issue of, well, what's the compensation going to be? And I agree with the recommendation also.
So with that, I would entertain a motion at this time. Commissioner Lycan?
I'm getting to it. Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval order 16-07-12-08, the matter of documenting the county administrator's annual performance evaluation, instructing human resources and county council regarding revision of the employment agreement and agreeing with option 1.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, it passes 4-1. Thank you very much, Ms. Edwards.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
I need to step offline for a little while. I need to step into a room at this point in time. May I join the meeting subsequently?
Yes, Commissioner. We will probably break here for lunch and then reconvene at 1:30. So we will try you back at 1:30.
Excellent, perfect. And would you expect executive session to be subsequent to the 1:30 proceedings?
Yes, we're gonna take it up after the 2 items this afternoon.
Excellent. At that point, I will sign off. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, for your
Thank you.
indulgence in this telephone conversation.
Yep. Thank you. All right. So let me get back here to my notes. Shut that off. All right. So next, item 10 is County Council announcements.
No announcements from County Council.
Are you sure?
Do we have an exec session?
I thought this morning you had discussed the potential of having an executive session this Thursday at 4. Was that still?
I think we're going to switch that around till after. Is up to you yet? Sorry.
Chair Stewart, we'd like to have a conversation with you about that. We're thinking it perhaps might be best following the joint elected officials meeting as opposed to before the joint elected officials meeting.
Just right after the...
Correct. We have Commissioner Lycan's committed to SWEDCO. There's several other things going on that require commissioner time, so we're thinking 15 minutes after the meeting just for a quick update.
Okay.
everyone's here.
I guess I would look to my colleagues at this time right now. Of course, Commissioner Farr is off the line, but we have a 5:30 joint elected officials meeting scheduled to go 2 hours. So would the commissioners be available at 7:30 to 7:45 for a brief executive session?
I would be available after the joint elected officials, Thursday night.
All right.
Yes.
All right, so there's 4 head nods, so I believe that that'll work.
And I do have one announcement. My office will be closed from 10:30 until noon on Thursday for the services for Mr. Voorhees, which are at Emmaus Lutheran Church.
Okay. All right. So with that, we'll move to Commissioner's business, and we'll start off with announcements. Announcements from my colleagues. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder, so on the 20th, the Joint Legislative Committee on Transportation will be here. There'll be, first, the schedule's finally getting complete, so there'll be a lunch with the Lane Area Commission on Transportation, Lane Act, followed by a tour. I will be attending the luncheon and will lead that conversation with the Act. I know Commissioner Bozovich will be on the tour as well and going over some, especially on the 126, what's happening there. And so Lane County is going to be well represented when they hear. And then that evening they'll have a public hearing. What they're trying to do is have a consolidated where the lunch and the public hearing will be located at the University of Oregon. And just finally got the lunch piece, and that's at the Loki. That's where they're going to have the lunch. And the public hearing, I'm not sure yet. And I think they're still identifying that site for the public hearing, but it will be at the University of Oregon. And then the following day, which is the 21st, I know that we're supposed to be serving ice cream, but I've been requested to speak before the Oregon Transportation Commission on that day, so I may be missing serving ice cream this year, darn it. But it's pretty important. It's over the some of the processes that were involved in the Connect process, and been asked to speak before the OTC just on how it evolved and where it went, and some things got a little confused, and so anyway, that's my announcement. Thank you.
Okay. Other announcements? I guess I would like to announce that this Thursday will be the opening of Bohemia Days. So we're continuing on with the summer festivities. It'll run from Thursday starting at 4 p.m. till Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. And you can go to the Bohemia Mining Days website to get a full agenda. It's fun-filled, packed. And I'd just like to recognize the former Commissioner Wheel Dryer is the director and scheduling those events, so I'm sure she's going to do a great job. A couple others, it was already mentioned, but I'll reiterate that this Wednesday evening, I believe, no, is it Thursday? The Waste Management meeting is actually Wednesday, tomorrow evening, up at the Upper McKenzie Community Center. Starts at 5:30 for the, it's an open house and a presentation of options that the board will be considering at a later date in regards to management of the waste system and some of the transfer sites that's being proposed. And then finally, on July 18th in Cottage Grove at Bohemia Park, there'll be a free concert. No tickets necessary to attend the Eugene Symphony at our amphitheater. So that festivities start at 5:30 with a petting zoo with some of the orchestra to learn about instruments, and then there will be a presentation of a ballet performance, and then it'll roll into the Eugene Symphony, I think approximately at 7 o'clock. So if you're looking for something great to do this Monday evening, come down to Cottage Grove and show up early and enjoy the festivities. Okay. So with that, we'll move to agenda team requests. Are there any agenda team requests of the board? Commissioner Bozovich?
Thank you. I would like to ask that the board send first through the legislative committee and then back to the board for position on IP 28.
Okay. Well, I think that's the appropriate avenue is to send it to the legislative committee and then a recommendation move forward. Is there any opposition of that? Okay. Other requests? Okay. See none. Then the executive session will be this afternoon. Is there any other business before we recess for lunch? Okay, so with that, we will recess until 1:30.